Hi, and welcome to Unplanned, the show about cities and how they work. I'm Sam, your host, and on this episode of Unplanned, you're actually witnessing a first for me, for the show, and a wonderful guest as well. This is the first live in-person interview we're doing on Unplanned. Everything else has been a Zoom call. But now, because it's fall and we feel okay with COVID, here in Massachusetts, we're going to have our first live interview. And the person I get to talk to and you get to see and hear from is none other than Benjamin Zander, who is the head, and I'm going to let him tell us his actual title, of the Boston Philharmonic. And there's a whole story and reason why the two of us are sitting together in his back garden on this lovely fall afternoon. Benjamin, thank you for joining us on Unplanned.
It's a great pleasure. And the reason we're sitting here is because on March the 12th was the last concert in Symphony Hall for a very long time. And it wasn't actually the Boston Philharmonic, it was the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra. We have two orchestras. The Boston Philharmonic was well known, been in existence for about 42 years. And the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra is much younger, 8 years old, and it's one of the finest orchestras in the world, and it's from 120 musicians from this area, and quite far, people travel in from far distances. Anyway, the last concert we gave was on March 12th. On March 13th, they closed the town down, and it's been locked down ever since. No symphony music has been heard in Boston since then by any orchestra, and will not be heard in all probability until next summer, which is a shocking thought, but it's what we have to live with. And so one of the things that I felt very upset about was the fact no live music. As Nietzsche said, life without music is a mistake. And so it's not that we don't have music, because we have music on the radio and constantly on the machines of one kind or another. Okay, you can't get away from it. But there's a huge difference between music that's played through a machine and music that's played live. It's like the difference of fruit that comes, or vegetables out of the can, and then you pick it directly from them. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. That difference is very clear.
Now let's set up why I'm sitting here.
Right. Well,
which is last Friday, I was walking down the street that you live on, and I saw people setting up for a concert. At least it seemed that way. It looked like there was going to be a concert in a driveway, and it turns out you're the person behind that whole story. Right. So tell us what that's all about.
Well, I'm fortunate to have a large driveway. I have a beautiful garden, as you can see, but I also have a very large driveway. And what we decided to do way back in May was to have music in the driveway. We called it Safe and Sound. Safe because it was outside and distant, and sound because of course it's the sound. Safe and Sound, live in the drive. We've had 14 concerts, and people come from all over to hear these concerts. And it's very, very moving, because not only the concerts are magnificent, often performers from the Boston Philharmonic and some other distinguished soloists. We've had one soloist who's an international superstar, Carol Winsent, who's known everywhere. The world's greatest flutist. She was living nearby. She said, "Please, can I play too?" And so we've had 14 concerts. They last about an hour, and people wander by just like you do, and like you did, and often amazed, stopping, rolling down the windows in their car, stopping on their bicycle, stopping on their walks. And I put out about 20 chairs at safe distance from each other, except when there are couples, they can sit together. And families come, and very young children come, and they're amazed. And I think the largest crowd we had at any one moment was about 90, which is large.
Really? And did it just on that number of 90, did they spill out into the street?
Into the street, and actually over the other side of the street.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to get the police to stop the traffic,
Right.
but in order to do so, I had to get 75 signatures. I thought that was too much trouble. So we go against the traffic and also against the church bells at 6 o'clock if we're on an evening. And then it's sort of Ives-like because we hear bells in the distance. It's quite beautiful. People love it. And the players are immensely grateful. They are so glad to be making real live music. In fact, one of them burst into tears when she started playing. And the reason she said was, I haven't played with anybody for 4.5 months. And that's just death to a musician. Like a mother who's produced a baby but can't give the milk. It's like that. And it's hard for somebody who doesn't know music to know how important that is for us. And so the main emotion has been one of gratitude.
Yeah. Well, take us back to the earliest days. I mean, so there you were. COVID was obviously descending upon us all, and we didn't know what it meant, and we didn't know what it was going to do. Part of my background with unPlanned in the show was my background in urban planning and thinking about cities was COVID allowed us to run the experiment we never thought we could run, which is what if we shut down an entire city for a whole day? And COVID basically allowed us to do it, forced us to do it. And we got to see a lot of things that we didn't expect and we didn't know, but it also revealed some of our strengths and some of our many, many, many weaknesses. But anyway, take us back in your world to
one of the students focusing on what wonderful things have happened as a result that could not have happened otherwise. And it's a formidable list in my own life. I mean, you asked me how my summer was. It's one of the most interesting summers I've ever had because so many of the things I did I never would have dreamed of doing. And one of them is this. And one of the things that's interesting about this area, I live in a very, very beautiful part of the world. In fact, the street on which I live, Brattle Street, one of the most famous streets in America, also thought to be the most beautiful street in America, which it may well be, full of extraordinary houses, full of history, full of beauty, and often very self-contained. The people in these houses don't tend to leave them. Partly because some of them are very famous, like the gentleman who lives in that yellow house right next door is the world's leading Shakespeare scholar.
Oh, is that
generally considered to be.
Interesting.
But we never see him.
Right. Is he lost in his books?
Well, I don't know. His friend Yo-Yo Ma lives in a few houses down, and it's an area of pretty remarkable people, but the music brought them out. I wouldn't say all of them, but what I've learned and discovered is that I have a wonderful neighborhood.
So did the music actually bring them out?
It brought them out.
They came
here, they wandered down. There's a lady in 170, I'm number 140. 170 was a house that actually was moved. It's a large house, but it was moved from Harvard Square. In fact, I saw it being moved.
Oh, really?
Yes. In fact, I thought maybe I was drunk. I was riding my bicycle and suddenly I saw a house coming towards me.
Right.
And it was on a huge, kind of, what do you call it? It was like
a dolly or something. Yeah.
Gigantic, occupying the whole street.
Yeah.
Anyway, 170.
Recently?
No, it was 1965.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Anyway, the lady who lives in that house is 104.
Okay.
And she comes to every concert.
Really?
In fact, she wasn't there on Friday. I was quite worried. I thought, what's happened to Frida?
Yeah.
Because Freema.
Yeah. Freema.
And she comes to every concert. And there are a number of people who come regularly.
Yeah.
But the music it's usually Sunday afternoon.
Right.
But in this case, we couldn't do it on Sunday. It was going to be raining, or there was some reason.
Right.
Anyway, we do it on Friday or we do it on Sunday. But the crowd is almost always about the same size. They've grown. Started off with a single cellist, Veleda.
I spoke to her, so I had the chance, and she gave me a little bit of the background of of that first phone call that she says you made to her,
Right.
to get the whole thing started, basically.
Right. And she's been instrumental,
And
if I may use the phrase.
Well, she reported that you invited her over with her cello, and she
Right.
said, well, I'm not sure about the cello. And you said, no, bring the cello. It's all about the music.
Right.
And she said that she parked herself in your drive and played
Bach for an hour.
Yeah.
And somebody told me the other day, I can't remember who it was, said that first concert was actually the most impactful of all. It's just solo Bach. We're going to end this Friday. I assume it's going to end because we're getting near fall. It's getting cold. Yeah. But on Friday we're also ending with Bach, with the Goldberg variations, and again with Vella. She's the assistant first cello of the Boston Philharmonic. Wonderful musician. She's a great musician, and she's also a wonderful human being. She creates a society around her. She's much loved. She calls up her friends, and they do it for nothing.
Well, I was going to ask, how do you get your players? Who comes out?
The players are friends, basically.
Yeah.
And most of them play in the Boston Philharmonic, and there's some very, very great players in the Boston Philharmonic. But one day, Bella brought a recorder player, because we don't have a recorder player in the Boston Philharmonic. People love to play. They do it for nothing. I give them a little, not a tip, I think of it as babysitting money, in case they have some expenses, gas or whatever. I don't want them to be out of pocket. But they do it for nothing. And then Dave Jamrog, who's our videographer, comes and films. And the last few have been filmed and live streamed. And that has made an enormous difference because the first one, to our astonishment, it was a Bach Brandenburg concerto, which is on my website, on my Facebook page.
Okay.
Facebook.
And we'll get a link to that.
Right. And it's amazing because that has been seen by 27,000 people around the world. I mean, in the most Bangladesh and China and Burma, and they write their little notes about how grateful they are in Greece and Budapest. It's just out of my little driveway here. But it's lovely, and people all say the same thing essentially. Thank you. Yeah. And the garden is part of it. The front garden.
And we'll show some shots of your garden.
The garden is a very important part of my life. Yeah. I found a wonderful gardener. Her name is Jenny Talbot. And she asked me when I hired her what I want. Right. What do you want, she said. I said, I want people to say thank you. And that's the only instruction I've ever given her. I've never...
On the about the garden.
Okay. The only one.
Yeah.
All I want is for people to say thank you. And my goodness, they say thank you. I mean, people occasionally knock on the door to tell me how grateful they are for the garden. Yeah. The front garden is gorgeous and as beautiful as any front garden in Cambridge, I think. Yeah. But the back garden is even more beautiful. Yeah. So I put a notice up in the back garden, in the front, saying, more beauty in the back, please peek. Yeah. And many people come around and they peek and they look at the garden, and I've made many friends as a result of that. Also people who come to the Boston Philharmonic concerts. Even somebody who lives up in the third floor came as a result of just coming. So it's been a very funny and amusing and delightful aspect of my life. And then the music added on is extraordinary because the beauty of the environment and the incredible beauty. My neighbor came over today in that yellow house. Yeah. They rehearse here in the garden before. So
they obviously must get together.
A little bit of rehearsal, not too much, but some of them
But they know each other and they've played together before.
And they're high level professionals. Except one of the concerts was given by kids from the youth orchestra. Right. And that was beautifully done. Since conductors have to be responsible for everything, I have to teach them life skills as well. Right. Because being a conductor is, the word maestro, it's very interesting. We use these words without thinking what they mean. Maestro means teacher. Okay. So the maestro is actually a teacher. Every Italian school mistress is a maestro. So it's not something grand up on the podium. It's people who teach. So I'm going to work with them in in The Art of Possibility, which is what I have spent part of my life doing.
Say that in The Art of
The
Possibility.
Art of Possibility is the name of the book, and that book was written in the year 2000, and as I say, it has sold over 1 million copies in 19 languages.
This is a book you've written.
Well, Roz and I did it together. The bulk of it was written by her. She's a wonderful painter, writer, and therapist. So she's got a career as a family therapist, but she's really a philosopher.
Sure.
And so what we did in that book largely is take the experiences that I had as a conductor and show the transformations that occurred, which largely occurred as a result of her coaching, because she's a life coach.
You mean your transformations,
Yeah.
or your players?
Well, the transformations that occurred in our world. For instance, just let me give you one example.
Sure.
The normal idea of a conductor is that the conductor's up here at the podium, the players are below, and the conductor's job is to dominate them and to lead them and make them obey his will. And I say his will because it's largely a male posture. One of the great transformations that occurred in my life is the realization it's the players who play. The conductor is silent. So actually the conductor gets his power from his ability to make other people powerful. And that is a transformational idea. That shifts everything then. The conductor's job is to awaken possibility in other people and takes his dominant role away and gives him the role of power. And so as a result of that, all sorts of things happen. Different language, different body language, different way of being, you're looking for different things. Instead of looking for domination, you're looking for shining eyes. Because if the eyes of the players are shining, then you know they're feeling empowered. So you're looking for something completely different in this model. And the model is the art of possibility.
I reacted and responded to this driveway concert that I saw unfolding with 2 emails. One was to our local newspaper, and one was to my father, and they both had the same title subject line, which was Cambridge at its very best. And it just struck me that way. But this is
a very Cambridge thing. Yeah, it was wonderful.
But you saw this. You wanted to see it.
I
felt
want to
it.
share.
What did you want to share?
I want to share beauty.
Right.
I mean, that's it. That, why have a back garden like this and not share it? I mean, because I'm alone in the house. My assistant is here and so on, sometimes students, but I want to share it with everybody. I want people. If you have something beautiful, share it. I mean, offer it to the world. And music is the ultimate beauty. There's nothing more beautiful in the world than the great works of the composers of Bach, Brandenburg, number 4. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful. And people, they just light up, and somehow all the troubles, and we have so many troubles at the moment. We're so distraught and so anxious and so in conflict. And suddenly when the music plays, all that falls away. You see another part of life. And so the combination of nature and music and community, that's about, you say the best of Cambridge, I think it's the best of life.
Good afternoon to all of you. This is the largest show we've had. We started last May the 3rd with a concert with a single cello player, and we've since had 14 concerts here, 14 concerts today. Thank you.